Welcome to this here podcast. I'm very pleased to welcome Giuseppe Bianco today. Giuseppe is an internal control system expert at Deutsche Börse Group. He brings nearly 20 years of international experience across financial markets, having worked in Milan, Dublin, London, and Luxembourg. He's also adjunct lecturer at Université de Lorraine, and is completing the Global Executive MBA at IESE Business School. Giuseppe has been a VC member since November 2025. Today, we are discussing a topic that continues to challenge even the most sophisticated institutions. Why fraud patterns and major failures keep repeating despite stronger regulation, more advanced systems, and greater access to information. When we look at cases such as Madoff, Wirecard, Theranos, and FTX, the question is not only how these failures happened, but why should many warning signs were visible without being challenged in time? So in this conversation, we will look beneath the surface of these cases to understand what leaders, investors, boards, and advisors still fail to see, and what stronger governance really looks like when complexity, incentives, and credibility starts to distort judgment. Giuseppe, welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Giuseppe, why do major frauds and failures keep repeating despite stronger regulation and more data?
Major frauds don't start with deception. They start with credibility. You see strong performance, reputable investors, and consistent narratives. And that's precisely the problem. Credibility reduces scrutiny. In the Madoff Ponzi scheme, reported returns were stable for years. That consistency discouraged deeper questioning, even as external warnings had already been raised.
Giuseppe, although most of our audience has probably heard of Madoff, to bring everybody up to speed, could you give us a 90 seconds elevator view on who he is and what he did?
Bernard Madoff was a well-known investment manager who claimed to deliver stable, consistent returns through a proprietary strategy. In reality, he was running a Ponzi scheme, using investor funds to pay earlier investors rather than generating profits. His long-standing reputation and unusually steady performances convinced the thousands of investors to trust him. The scheme collapsed in 2008 with estimated loss of 65 billion USD. He was later sentenced to 150 years in prison.
Wow, it's a long time.
Yeah. And in the Wirecard scandal, we see a different structure, but a similar pattern. It was a listed company with auditors and a strong market credibility. Despite early concern, were not fully resolved.
Giuseppe, can you also remind the audience what the Wirecard scandal was all about?
Wirecard was a German payment company that reported rapid growth by processing digital transactions globally. A significant portion of its reported profit relied on business activities that were not properly verifiable. And the 1.9 billion euro in cash it claimed to hold was later found to be missing. Investors were reassured by its listed status, auditors, and strong market narrative. The company collapsed in 2020, and senior executives became subject to criminal proceedings. The signals were there. Warnings were insufficiently investigated and not escalated to decisive action. So the issue is not detection. It's escalation. People rationalize, others validated it. There must be an explanation. Then comes complexity. In the FTX case, what happened, what appeared as sophistication, masked the weak governance and limited transparency. And many relied on perceived credibility rather than fully understanding the underlying risks.
For our audience, STX was a major cryptocurrency exchange that generated revenues from trading fees and platform activity. Giuseppe, what was the problem there?
It failed after customer funds were improperly used to support a related trading firm, Alameda Research. Its founder public image, strong investor backing, and the rapid growth helped build trust among users and investors. When confidence collapsed in 2022, billions in customer funds were missing. The company filed for bankruptcy, and its founder was later convicted of fraud and sentenced to prison. And finally, incentives. Challenging success has a cost: reputational, relational, and financial. So concerns are delayed. By the time action happens, it's no longer a signal, it's a crisis. So despite more data and regulation, these failures repeat because they are not failures of information, they're failures of judgment and governance.
Yes, everybody wants to be taking the pictures with the winners, and even if they're a fraud. What are the early signals that something may be wrong, even when everything looks credible?
Early signals are rarely obvious. They appear as small frictions in a strong story. For example, in the Theranos scandal, the narrative was powerful, but claims could not be independently validated under normal testing conditions.
Yes, Theranos is a famous case of deception. It is so famous that Hulu, Disney, produced in 2022 a miniseries on Elizabeth Holmes, the company founder. The miniseries was called The Dropout. It details the rise and fall of the blood testing startup and Holmes' deception. Total investment loss exceeded 700 million. Giuseppe, can you expand a little bit more on the case?
Theranos was a health technology founded in 2003 that claimed could run hundreds of blood tests with a single drop of blood. The business model was based on scaling this technology across a healthcare partnership, but the technology did not perform as claimed. High-profile investors, a compelling narrative, and strong media coverage helped attract funding and credibility. The company effectively collapsed between 2015 and 2018. Its founder was later convicted of fraud and sentenced to prison. That's a key signal. Narrative stronger than verifiable reality. Other patterns are clarity that require effort. If answers are partial, delayed, or overly complex, that's a signal. Second, reputation replacing evidence. When validation relies on investors, names, endorsement instead of data. Then we have urgency, fear of missing out, reduce challenge. Then asymmetry of understanding. If only a few really understand the model, there is a risk. Finally, behavior under questioning. Strong businesses simplify. Weak ones deflect, complicate, or avoid. No single signal is decisive, but patterns of friction require structured challenge.
Yes, we are seeing today in the geopolitical turmoil that we are living through that controlling the narrative is absolutely key, even if it means sharing memes and fake news. What prevents sophisticated investors, boards, and advisors from acting in time?
It's not lack of capacity, it's system dynamics. There is commitment escalation. Once invested, people defend the decision. There is a diffusion of responsibility. Everyone assume someone else checked. This was evident in Wirecard, where multiple actors were involved, but effective end-to-end challenge did not materialize. Then social pressure, challenging consensus indeed as a cost, normalization, small issues become acceptable, speed versus discipline, fast decisions are rewarded, and the challenge is delayed. And the illusion of control. Sophistication creates overconfidence. So the problem is activation. People could act, but don't act in time.
What do cases like Madoff, Wirecard, FTX, and Theranos have in common beneath the surface?
These cases are structurally similar. To start with, we have credibility replacing scrutiny. For Madoff, reputation. For Theranos, narrative. For FTX, backed by high-profile investors. Question shift from "is this real?" to "how do I join?" Then we have complexity reducing challenge. FTX and Wirecard had opaque structures. Understanding become delegated, and challenges weaken. Incentive favor continuation. Deals, fees, growth. Challenging creates friction and is avoided. The validation loop. The assumption was others checked it, but there was lack of independent verification. Finally, simple questions like where is the cash, or does it work for Wirecard and Theranos were not pushed to resolution. These are not isolated failures, but repeatable system patterns.
So what should leaders do differently to recognize and challenge risk earlier?
Leaders need to shift discipline to the very beginning of the relationship, not later. Because most failures don't happen due to lack of information, but because the challenges came too late. Once trust, urgencies, and momentum are in place, objectivity is already reduced. Three things matter: delay trust and accelerate verification. The stronger the story, the stronger the need to verify independently. Force simplicity early. If you cannot clearly explain how the value is created and where the money come from, that is already a reason to slow down. And accept friction. Taking time, asking for documentation, structuring the process, that's what enables real challenge. So the goal is simple: apply discipline before judgment is influenced.
If one of the recurring failures is that institutions challenge too late, the obvious next question is what should a practical front end screening process look like before you even spend real time on a counterparty?
That's where a front end screening process becomes critical. It should be simple and non negotiable. Basic gates: identity, ownership, proof of funds, proof of product. Separate narrative from evidence, no immediate deep involvement, and clear stop conditions with missing info or inconsistencies. Most weak situations don't pass this stage. And more importantly, once you move past it, challenging become much harder.
Yeah, back to your fear of missing out. Sometimes companies run too fast. They don't because they fear, missing an opportunity. So, in your view, how much fraud risk is reduced simply by forcing discipline at the very beginning of a relationship, before trust, urgency, or commercial excitement takes over?
Significantly and structurally, you avoid the bad situation, not just detect them. At the early stage, judgment is more neutral, with lower bias and pressure. For example, applying basic requirements such as clear governance, segregation of assets, and transparency would likely have raised the early concern in cases like FTX. Early discipline filter risks out.
Well, many companies say they are selective, but in practice, they still move too quickly. How important are basic gates such as confidentiality agreements, KYC, proof of funds, or proof of product in filtering out weak or misleading counterparties early?
These are not formalities, they are filters. Weak counterparties drop out early. Behavior is revealed. Inconsistent or evasive responses are signals, and they also protect time. Attention is scarce, and strong counterparties expect structure. Discipline increase credibility.
For example, in China, people are very reluctant to sign NDAs or provide KYCs. At VCA, counterparties and members do not just enter the ecosystem informally. There is a registration, documentation, risk screening, and periodic due diligence. From a governance standpoint, why does formal onboarding matter so much?
From a governance standpoint, formal onboarding is absolutely critical because it transforms a relationship from informal interaction into a structured, accountable framework. It creates a baseline of verified information. Also, it introduces accountability from the start, reduce asymmetry across participants, creating consistency and making interactions more reliable. And it enables ongoing monitoring, not just entry controls. With periodic due diligence and structured follow up, changes can be detected, risks can be reassessed, a relationship can be adjusted over time. Without formal onboarding, this continuity is very difficult to achieve.
One recurring problem in fraud cases is that credibility substitutes for verification. How can advisors and intermediaries stay commercially effective while still insisting on a compliance first process?
In reality, the two are not in conflict. They reinforce each other. The key is how the process is positioned and applied. Compliance improves deal quality, filters weak opportunities, protect reputation, and increase success rate. The key is consistency. No exception for good stories. And process become a signal of professionalism.
Yeah, I like this no exception for good stories, especially when people come claiming that you're going to make 40 times your investment in a couple of weeks' time. This is definitely a red flag. As a closing question, if you had to leave boards, investors, and advisors with one discipline they should implement immediately to challenge risk earlier, why would that be?
Never outsource judgment to credibility. Madoff, FTX, Theranos, same pattern. Credibility replaced verification. So ask, what do we believe? What do we know? No matter how strong the narrative, always verify independently, because credibility opens the door, but only verification tells you whether you should walk through it.
Well, this is a very nice image. Thank you very much, Giuseppe Bianco, for this interview.
Thank you.